Hello everyone and welcome to the University of Arts London College of Fashion 2025 Fashion Business School Postgraduate Podcast Sessions. These series of panel discussions have been driven and influenced by the exciting and topical fashion industry related subjects researched and delivered by our postgraduate master's programme students for their final major projects. They cover current and relevant themes shaping the wider fashion industry, such as global supply chains and policies, psychology in fashion, online environments and inclusivity, and the use of AI. We hope that you enjoy these sessions and thank you for listening.
Hello, welcome. It's really nice to meet you both. My name is Nicole Dunlop and I'm one of the programme directors here at the Fashion Business School in the London College of Fashion. So one of the courses that's within my programme is actually MA Fashion Design Management. And I believe, ladies, that both of you have just finished your degree.
That's right.
Your master's degree in Fashion Design Management. So first of all, let me say congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's such an achievement. You handed in your assignment, your final master's project about 3 weeks ago, wasn't it now?
So it's been about 3 weeks. Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course.
Tell me a little bit about you.
Yes, of course. My name's Tarja Silva and I'm from Sri Lanka. And as you just mentioned, we're both from Fashion Design Management. It's been an amazing year and I feel accomplished already to have, completed our master's projects. But here we are.
Hi, I'm Nidhi, and like Tarja said, we're both on the same course doing fashion design management. We just finished our master's project, and I'm so excited to see what the next steps are.
And nervous.
And
the results.
Very nervous. But results might come anytime soon, so.
Oh, I wish you lots of luck with that.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we're here to discuss today is the theme is marketing and buying. And I know that both of you did your master's project on marketing parts of the fashion industry. So would you like to talk to me about your project? Just tell me what it was about.
Of course. I think my project was less about marketing, but it did focus on buyers. So I focused on the relationship between Sri Lankan manufacturers and British mass market brands. So British mass market brands were your M&S, Tesco, Sainsbury's, for example. And it was a relationship between those buyers and Sri Lankan manufacturers. And I focused it on a lens of post-colonialism, because Sri Lanka was colonized by the British. It was exploring that tender relationship.
That sounds fascinating. So when you say Sri Lankan manufacturing, is that the garment manufacturing?
Correct. Garment manufacturers. And I focused on lead suppliers. So these suppliers are called full service vendors and they take care of your product from end to end. So from design to delivery up to FOB, freight on board. So those are the manufacturers I focused on. So they're fairly big manufacturers in the industry, giants of the Sri Lankan manufacturing.
Okay. So what did you actually discover?
Wow. Very interesting because I myself worked for these manufacturers in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So I had a bit of first-hand experience myself and I had to really check my own prejudice, my own bias. I kept a journal throughout my dissertation because I didn't want to project my bias on any of my work. The findings were interesting because I felt like there was an internalized power imbalance between the two. Mainly, of course, is an inherent power that the buyer holds because the buyer is the one placing the order and the manufacturers will deliver. So putting that aside, there was an internalized power imbalance for the Sri Lankans. Because Sri Lankans were colonized by the British, they have internalized this sort of, inferiority, like, we're less than the white counterparts, or we're less than, and it's got to do with skin tone as well. And Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk more about the findings, but there was a lot. But the key thing I found was an internalized power imbalance for the Sri Lankans.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make any recommendations for how that
I did. It was very focused on like a few topics that kept coming up. So yeah, I can touch on that a bit later. So I made very key recommendations for a few things that just kept recurring.
Okay, interesting. And can you talk to us about your project?
Sure. So my project was based on emerging Indian designers and how there's another new person every day starting a brand in India because of how easy it is. The entry barriers are very low. The resources like Sri Lanka, we also have a lot of resources, a lot of manufacturers. So my project focuses on how there's such a saturated domestic market and yet these brands don't get global recognition. And it also focuses on the paradox of Indian manufacturers manufacturing garments for international brands. And these international brands take inspiration when it comes to aesthetics. They get their garments manufactured here. But yet these Indian brands and the Indian designers who work so much on their brands don't gain that global visibility and they don't get that recognition that they could be getting. Also because the market is so saturated and there's so many brands, a lot of brands fail at the early stage, which is why I looked into brands that were like 2 to 5 years old, because based on research, that was the time frame that a brand would sustain beyond just, making break even or like trying to make profits after 2 years, because it's very easy to start, but I think it's very difficult to sustain. So yeah, that's the idea of it.
Oh, fascinating. So you said Indian brands.
Yeah.
Are they brands selling to consumers?
Yeah, so these are basically homegrown brands started with little to no investment and by emerging designers or founders who just have a very creative vision. And these brands would basically, I focused on Western and Indo-Western because if you open up your Instagram and find an Indian influencer, they would be comparing, oh, these are the homegrown alternatives to Zara or H&M. So they are trying to promote these brands that have been started by Indian entrepreneurs, and they are often compared to global fast fashion brands or even Indian fast fashion brands. But these brands are a little more on the sustainable side because they do made to orders and they have a smaller number of pieces that they sell because they start small. So this is what I was focusing on.
Okay, fascinating. And then they sell in India?
Yes, from D2C models usually, because it's very easy to start your website and just sell through Instagram initially. And if it works out, you can open a store somewhere and make it physical as well. But they do start off with D2C.
Oh, that's interesting though. So the companies that you're talking about, you said there were manufacturing companies that sell to big British retailers.
Yeah.
And yet you're talking about designers who actually sell direct to the
consumers. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see any way that your brands could sell to the consumer and learn perhaps from the Indian companies?
I think there isn't a big market for that because these giants will manufacture for, let's say, Victoria's Secret, Gap. So it's volume-driven business. So it wouldn't make sense for them to cater to local consumers. So it's just not their business model.
Yeah.
Which is why I was even talking about, so personally, I used to work in a manufacturing unit just like Tarja, and I have seen, it was a denim manufacturing unit, and they used to make products for international brands as well as local brands. The only difference would be they would use a cheaper fabric or they would have labor that's cheaper in terms of rate per hour for the Indian brands, and they would make a high quality product for the international brands. It's basically about how much you want your product to cost. But I think that's why they focus directly on consumers because they have smaller quantities, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
And what were the recommendations that you made in your...
So the recommendations, in my findings, I found out that a lot of brands were bootstrap brands and they got their families to invest initially. And a lot of brands focused on made to order only, so they don't waste a lot of inventory, because if you have little to no investment, it doesn't make sense for you to have a lot of inventory, especially if you're just selling through your website, because you can always get those done. And I also noticed a lot of designers initially started outsourcing their manufacturing, but they eventually moved in-house because that was an investment that you can make. And one of the designers also suggested a trickle-down approach where she said, my products would sell better for the international consumers because they understand why it's expensive rather than Indian consumers. And she said, I would rather go sell outside and then trickle down and come back domestic, which was really interesting. So in my recommendations, I have suggested that if you have the kind of investment you need to make, you can. I also had a few political views on it, how people said because of the tariffs and all of that, it's very difficult to export. Even if they want to have a presence internationally, it's very difficult because you have to pay a lot of taxes. You have to make sure that when you're exporting, there's a third party that wants to take your products. And you need to figure out the logistics a lot more than just finances. So in my recommendations, I also suggested that emerging designers who want to start their brand consider all of these things.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating.
Thank you.
So, yes, thank you very much. That's really interesting. And the recommendations you said you were going to touch on earlier.
Yes. So one interesting finding and recommendation that I ended up with was in Sri Lankan culture, we have this saying where we should treat a guest akin to God. Yeah. So whenever we have a guest, a tourist, anyone visiting the country, we give them our all. Like we treat them like kings and queens, like gods, for example. This culture, although it's great for tourism, it's kind of trickled into business, where when we have buyers or foreigners coming into the country, companies will go all out. We have traditional dances and elephants and garland them, and they go above and beyond to make them feel so special and give them a memorable visit, which I think is beautiful. But it actually became problematic when these manufacturers spend so much of money. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really result in a prosperous buyer, like a good price, a better price for the manufacturer. Because the buyers come there, they have a target, they need to meet it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that one of my recommendations was understanding that and then having a balance. Like it's beautiful to show our culture. And I know these buyers who come, the visitors, they really appreciate it. But then, tailor it, just manage it. Don't go above and beyond. Don't spend so much of money and don't lose sight of what the buyers are there for. Some of my participants actually complain saying, we spend all this time doing this. We don't really focus on the product that we're trying to sell. So it was problematic. That was one interesting finding and recommendation.
I think that's really interesting. And I come from a buying background.
Right.
And what you're saying is absolutely true.
Yeah.
I mean, I always found it fabulous when I went to different countries and learnt about the culture and everything else like that. But actually, you have a margin that you have to hit, and you have to sell your T-shirt for £1, £5, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so that's absolutely true.
And actually, when I interviewed the buyers, the British buyers, some of them honestly struggled a little bit because I touched on ethics and personal ethics as well. If a country is going through some sort of turmoil, a natural disaster, we all know what happened during COVID-19. Do these buyers support their suppliers? Are they there for them? Or do they have to, just risk mitigate, go to the next country that can supply?
Yeah.
So that was a real struggle between personal ethics and business. A lot of people said at the end of the day, it's meeting the bottom line, it's meeting the price, and it all came down to price. Sustainability is great, but it comes down to price.
Yeah, it does.
Ethics, people losing their jobs, great, but we need to maintain our business. So buyers actually, I don't know if you felt the same, really struggled with their own personal ethics, and they're like, oh, we wanted to support the supplier, we wanted to be there for them, it's their lives, they have children, families, and it's their job on the line. and we couldn't be there for them because our company had, set standards that we had to meet. So that was a real contrast there.
Yeah, I think when you're a buyer, you, as you say, you create relationships
Yes.
with your suppliers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can actually make it quite difficult, morally quite difficult, because you feel loyal to those suppliers.
Exactly.
But I think in the ideal world, what you would like is a win-win, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So the supplier can actually make money, and the buyer can actually sell the product
Absolutely.
at a price that the consumers will pay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a question of educating consumers more?
100%.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's the consumers that were unaware of what's going on in manufacturing and how these relationships work. And most of the time, brands are, running behind pleasing a consumer or keeping the consumers unaware. A lot of the times when the manufacturers, or when I spoke to the Sri Lankan manufacturers, they said, we had to create these sustainable, innovative products, but our brands didn't want to take those on board, because if they said, oh, now we're giving you a sustainable product, the consumers are going to start questioning, well, what about the rest of your products? Are they not sustainable? So what are you saying? So then the brands will quietly implement their sustainability into products, but not talk about it, not market it, for example, because they don't want to show their consumers that they haven't been sustainable all along. So there are lots of internal struggles
I think
on this topic.
consumers are also spoiled with options these days. If not this brand, they have another. So they can always go, if they don't want a sustainable option and if they don't want to pay as much, they can always go to another brand and they can find the same thing anywhere else, unless you're selling something that's super innovative. But in the case of fast fashion brands or even
Mass market.
mass market, they usually have the same, very similar products. So consumers are in the end responsible for what they choose. But
Who did you interview? Who were your participants?
my participants were the founders of these brands, and one of them actually had been on Shark Tank, and she's on major e-commerce platforms in India, which was really interesting because I understood that she had a failed business of 2 years and then she had this, and it gave me a different perspective into, in my recommendations, I also put in what you shouldn't be doing to fail, not just what you can do as a brand. But I interviewed 9 founders, out of which 2-3 brands were quite successful, and some of them were at the verge of it, which is why I got to see what they went through, what was their struggle, and what would make it easier for them. For example, government gives you funds to start a brand, and not just governments. There's a lot of schemes that lets you not pay taxes for the first 3 years. And a lot of people were unaware because they just didn't research about it and they just got their families to fund their brands. So that was one very interesting finding that I spoke about again.
Okay.
I think one very similar thing in ours is we're focusing on the manufacturing industry.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
we both worked
in it, so I guess our heart was in it, and that's where it came from.
I remember discussing initially what our map topic was going to be, and both of us wanted to go a little more towards the cultural appropriation direction, a little bit, in the start at least,
Definitely.
So you mentioned common struggles that the brands have.
Yeah.
What was the most significant one of those, the most important?
I think a lot of brands spoke about how reaching to the consumers was very difficult for them. Reaching to the right consumers was very difficult. Say their clothes were a little more expensive, a little more on the pricier side for the Indian consumer. They had to target a certain age group, a certain demographic, which would work for them, but that at a very early stage is very difficult to do. And apart from that, I think say that as a brand, you can grow if the founder's mindset is a do not give up mindset, and you have to be very proactive. You will have a set of rules and you will have a set plan on how things should go, but they don't necessarily go like that. And you have to make use of what resources you have then and try and change your decisions accordingly, which is something I heard from almost every founder. They thought their brand would be selling X number of items in a month, which didn't happen. But there were some months that they sold a lot, and there were some months that they didn't sell at all. So what they said was, you need to be very consistent and you need to not give up and constantly like keep changing your plans according to what you have. So yeah.
And so your brands, they sell, you said some sell in India and some sell internationally?
Yeah. So some of them have made their websites global. So they just ship internationally, but 2 of them actually have international presence at third-party stores. There are some Indians living abroad that start, basically they have stores where they curate 4 to 5 homegrown brands. They bring them together and they put it in one place where, people who appreciate cultural, sorry, can we cut that? People who appreciate a lot of, sorry. Okay, so a lot of consumers here appreciate the Indian craft, and a lot of these brands would have like shirts with a little embroidery on it or sets, and like consumers here would want to buy that, and they would be willing to pay a certain amount for it as well. So a lot of NRIs living outside have started their brands, but they also do a lot of white labeling, which is basically they get products from India and they put their label on it and they sell it here. So a few brands do that just to like earn a little more. I personally don't find that very ethical, because if you are putting so much hard work and you're trying to start your own brand, and if you just sell your products and give it another label, I don't think that is ethical. But if you are, like, for example, the brand I was talking about had their own manufacturing unit, and they, through their own brand, they weren't making much sales. So this was another alternative just to earn extra money.
That's actually what I was going to say. It's interesting because your brands are selling to the consumer,
Yeah.
yet they have the skills of design and manufacturing. And your brands also have the skills of design and manufacturing, but they actually choose to sell business to business.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Interesting. And it's interesting you said about this culture that Indians or people really recognize craft now.
Yeah, they do.
I know, like back in the day, I mean, as a kid growing up, we were so influenced by Western culture.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is going to reveal my age, but I grew up, watching the Spice Girls and the Backstreet Boys.
No one can guess
For you,
your age.
it's probably Sabrina Carpenter. But I mean, we were so influenced by Western culture.
Yeah.
And I remember doing my undergrad just focusing on westernized trend. So I used to think Sri Lankan culture was maybe secondary, primitive. And then doing this dissertation, I really questioned myself and I really questioned my own identity. It's funny when you said culture, because now I try my level best to add a little bit of culture into anything and everything I do. I know today's outfit doesn't really represent my culture, so contradicting myself. But, if I'm going out, if I'm going to some special place or special occasion, I will try and wear something Sri Lankan, handmade Sri Lankan batik or, handmade Sri Lankan jewelry, something that just stamps where I'm from and my culture. Now I'm very proud about it. And I don't know why I was made to feel like my culture was secondary. And I think this post-colonial mindset has something to do with it. My studies did reveal a little bit of that. And that has created these hybrid individuals like myself. So post-colonial theorists call these hybrid people a blend of someone who mimics their colonizer. So mimics a westernized individual, but they're not perfect. They're like an imperfect imitation, if you will.
I agree.
Yeah, so we speak English, we will dress Western, act Western, but we're not really, representing that culture.
Yeah.
We're our own, so we create this hybrid individual that's a bit of both. And we learn to live in today's world. And a lot of the people I interviewed from the Sri Lankan manufacturing end were these hybrid individuals. So it was very interesting to understand their mindset.
And Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree, because I feel like when I was in India, I know for a fact that my projects were not based on like cultural appropriation. Only when I came here, I realized that this is something that is a big issue. And I myself am doing it directly or indirectly. I think we don't realize it when we're doing it, because we are so influenced, so heavily influenced by everything around us, that only when I came here I realized that, oh, a lot of projects people here actually appreciate artists so much back in India. When I saw that, I realized that unknowingly it was just on the back of my head, which is why I wanted, even for my masters, I thought of another topic based on artisans, but which is what I submitted for my research proposal as well. But then when I was in India and I didn't hear back from LCF, my options were either start a brand, or if I get in, come here. And when I did some research into starting a brand, I realized how saturated the market is. Because if I thought I could start a brand, anyone can. Like, it would be that easy. I know I have a design degree, but people without a design degree can do it as well, because all you need is a manufacturer, some designs, and you're good to go. So when I thought about it, that's when I realized that this research would help someone like me. If I eventually want to go start a brand, I will know what to do and what not to do. So yeah, it was super helpful.
I actually think it would be impossibly difficult to start up a brand, because because we all have the same influence.
Yeah.
I know you come from different countries, but actually with things like WGSN, we're looking at the same worldwide influences. So actually, to come up with a design and a brand that actually has something unique and different, I think actually that would be really difficult.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, we would have to cater it around solving a problem in the fashion industry.
Yes.
Like, say, something for pregnant women, or something that will help in an innovative way. Otherwise, we would just be another brand. So yeah, that is quite challenging, which is something I looked at as well. And if you are going down the basic route, you can or cannot be successful just based on luck and hard work, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, ladies, what are your plans now?
Oh my God.
That's difficult. No more classes.
No more classes. I actually miss university.
I do
miss
too.
coming
When I walked in, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Coffee and, wore my tag. I actually feel sad not being able to come for class and seeing all of you guys.
Yeah.
It was a very good year.
At least.
Yeah, I think I truly enjoyed it. And I've, found a different aspect to me as well. I feel like
you
some
grow.
self-identity. You grow. So it's wonderful. What are we going to do next?
That is such a difficult question. I feel like we're at that point where we have to make a very big decision. Either, for me personally, I would like to work in London, try and apply for jobs here, and then eventually go back and start a brand.
That's great.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine starting a brand. Like, for me, it's
Hard.
it's too hard.
The experience you have, you can.
I think it's I'm so glad it's your passion, and I'm gonna look out for you, buy your stuff one day. But I think it's never my passion. I think I would like to stay and fight for some supply chain justice, maybe.
That's
or
nice.
just trying to find some balance between, these relationships that we were talking about between buyers and manufacturers. Like you said, it should be a win-win, and I think that's where we need to go right now, because there is an imbalance, whether we like to admit it or not.
I hope you do
I hope I fight
make a difference.
Make a difference. I'll try. I'll try my best.
Well, I think the world will be hearing a lot from you ladies, and it's been fascinating having this conversation. So all I can say is that I'm delighted you enjoyed your master's degree, and I wish you all the best and all the luck in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really nice speaking to you, Nicole.